Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Brian Murphy, and Eric Lopez with you on a stacked Thursday here. Sorry for getting this out a little bit late, but we had a lot of stuff going on, but we wanted to get it out to you, and we've got a lot to talk about in this show. We got baseball, we've got softball getting into the rankings, or maybe not, which I know Eric is going to have a lot of fun with here, aren't you, Eric?
Want to call it fun, that's one way of looking at it.
We've got we're going to talk hoops. Jeremy Brener joins us to talk about women's basketball as well, and a big win for them over Temple last night, and also a very special guest, which I'm really excited about, Phil Dalhausser, Olympic gold medalist, men's beach volleyball player, UCF graduate, is joining us on the show to talk about what's going to be basically his last ride to the Olympics. And they're starting with an exhibition match this Friday down in Lake Nona at a place called Boxey Park at 7:30 on Friday. So we talk about that, and we get into that. And lots of other things to talk about, but let's just remind you real quick, you can follow us at UCF_Banneret on Twitter, Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret, and of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com, where we are SB Nation's home for UCF sports. All the UCF sports you can digest, including baseball and softball. We'll start with baseball here, and what a weekend it was for the Knights as they go up to number 9 Auburn and sweep them. They sweep the Tigers in Plainsman Park, and it was a really fantastic performance all the way around, culminating on Sunday with a 12-2 blowout. And of course, the Knights coming off of a victory over Bethune-Cookman on Tuesday as well. Currently, this team. There's the schedule. Okay, so right now this team stands at 8-1, 4-1 obviously at home. They've won 4 in a row, and they're heading into a 4-gamer with Cal State Northridge. Brian Murphy, your old stomping grounds. And so I know you're excited about this weekend coming up, but before we get to that,
it's the Murph series, baby. The Murph series is here.
Yes, it's the Murph Bowl is what it is.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about this weekend. How significant was this for UCF baseball going forward? Like, are we gonna be looking back at the series and saying, "Wow, this was really the biggest non-conference series of the season"?
Well, it was even the biggest non-conference series of the season coming into the season. I mean, you could say that the 2 games that they have later on against Florida State is technically a series, but really it's not. It's just 2 games. This was the biggest chance they had to prove themselves in a series outside of the AAC. And I think, just talking to Greg Lovelady, which I just got done with about 20 minutes ago, he came out of that feeling that his team is further along now than he expected them to be. We have talked, Jeffrey, about how many new players are on this team. They have 18 new players. They have a bunch of pitchers returning from injury. And for them to go in there and sweep Auburn convincingly. I mean, the Friday night was a close game. Saturday was basically an easy game till the 9th inning. And then Sunday should have been a mercy rule kind of game. I think it showed Greg Lovelady that the talent he knows he has is meshing with a bunch of guys who are ready for the moment sooner than I thought he thinks they would be. I mean, he even said today that this team is further along than he imagined they would be, just because they're so inexperienced at this level. And for them to go up there and hand Auburn, its first home sweep in the 125 years of that program, and And really, it's one of the best weekends in UCF baseball history. And I know he did not see that coming the way it did last weekend.
Yeah, credit to Eric DeSalvo, because I think he pointed out that's the first time that Auburn was swept at home in a 3-game weekend series by a non-conference opponent in program history. Is that right?
That's correct.
125 years they've been playing baseball. Unbelievable. I wanted to give a special shout to Jeff Hakinson, who I thought was, I mean, you could have picked your MVPs here, right? But I thought he was the real MVP of the series, especially in the second game, because you could feel it kind of teetering a little bit there late, where Auburn had the bases loaded and nobody out, and they're down 7-3. Lovelady pulls the hook on Zach Hunsicker, and throws Hakinson in there, and I know and you and I both know he didn't want to do that, right? I mean, he wanted to try and hang on to Hakinson. What does Hakinson do? Induces a pop with nobody out and the bases loaded. He induces a pop out and strikes out the last 2 batters and ends the game in I guess rather unceremonious fashion. And that for me was like the wake up and smell the roses kind of moment. That, wow, okay, this pitching staff has the depth that Lovelady was talking to us about in the preseason that he was looking for.
Yeah, and what is funny about that Hakinson appearance, Lovelady told him that day that he was up basically, and we should preface this by saying that Hakinson threw 28 pitches on Friday night. He had a 4-out save to close down the game on Friday night, so he had already been taxed pretty heavily Friday. But he said he felt good Saturday. Lovelady said he was up, and he gave him another 16 pitches. For a guy who pitched on back-to-back days only once last year, I thought it was a big thing for Jeff and for Coach Lovelady to see. And I think what's really working for Jeff, I mean, we talk about the whole season overall. He's faced 13 guys. He has struck out 10 of them. Only 1 of them have reached base. What's working for Jeffrey is he's obviously got a mid-90s fastball. It's ticking up to like 96. He's always kind of had that. Maybe he's added a couple miles per hour this year, but he's had the power stuff. What he's implemented this year, or really refined, is there's a slider that he's been trying to make sharper ever since he got here. And last year, both Lovelady and him will tell you that it was not a good slider. It was, I think I asked Jeff about that pitch today, and Jeff said it was really, really bad last year. And it was kind of a loopy slurve. It didn't have as much hard break on it. This year he's got that hard bite on it, and so he's mixing a power mid-90s fastball with a sharper mid-80s to low-80s slider, and it's devastating in college baseball, and you can see that in his first 4.1 innings.
So let's spin this forward to this coming weekend. 4 games with Cal State Northridge. The Matadors, they come in at 7-0. They among their victories over one of them was over Washington State. They're coming off of a weekend where they beat Grand Canyon twice and Fordham once, and then they come into this meeting with UCF. And the Knights, by the way, in the rankings finally, they after the sweep with Auburn, they are as high right now as 17th in Collegiate Baseball Newspaper. They were at 19 in D1Baseball.com. Baseball America's got them at 21. So let's look at this series coming in right now. This is no slouch that they're playing against here in Cal State Northridge. Is that right?
Well, I think everyone will tell you that Cal State Northridge is off, much like UCF, off to a better start than expected. I mean, this was a team that was predicted to finish 7th in the Big West, has not had a lot of success in the last 6 years, or really handful of years, and they start out 7-0, and it's both sides of the plate. They've done really well, or pitching and hitting they've done really well. But it's Dave Serrano, I think, is an interesting story as their manager. Dave Serrano was, for those who grew up in California, he was fantastic college baseball, taking both UC Irvine and Cal State Fullerton to the College World Series back in the early 2000s, mid-2000s. And then he goes off to Tennessee for, I believe, 7 or 8 years, and I don't think ever has a winning season, and just really struggled in the SEC. And so he's come back now to California, and he's looking to take his third program to possibly Omaha. It's interesting how this is all panned out, and I believe it's a 4-game series between two teams that I think are already surpassing expectations, and that's fun.
What do you thought? Go ahead, Brian.
Murph, I mean, real quick about this here. The thing that's kind of stand out to me this week, you were in Daytona on Tuesday when they UCF took out Bethune-Cookman comfortably.
Yeah.
You and I wondered, right after the Auburn series, you get ranked on Monday, everybody's like excited, and we both were like thinking, boy, this has like a flat performance written all over it, right? Like an upset up deal there going into Daytona. And as you wrote about this for the Orlando Sentinel, I thought it was really fascinating. Greg Lovely thought the same thing and challenged his team, didn't he?
Absolutely. He wanted those guys to feel good about being rewarded with their national ranking, but he didn't want them to become complacent because of it. So he really challenged his guys before the Tuesday game against Bethune to go out there and make sure they show exactly why people are considering them a top 20 team in the nation. They've got to prove it day in, day out. That doesn't stop now either when they're facing CSUN. And they did that. Obviously, Tuesday night, they were fantastic. The pitching was absolutely superb. Jalen Whitehead with really the best performance I've ever seen out of him. 5 innings, 8 Ks, 2 base runners. He had 50 strikes out of 75 pitches. He was outstanding, but they were all really good on the mound. The offense was fine. They really got helped out by a bunch of Bethune-Cookman errors. But it was a game in which, you kind of feared that maybe UCF would come back to earth and sort of, be not focused on the game in hand. They come off this big weekend series where they beat a top 10 team. Now they got to go travel to, this, let's be honest, it's a junk stadium. It's not a good stadium, playing a very mediocre team, and they've got to bring that same intensity. And I thought they did that. And that's a sign of a team that is locked in right now.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's going to be interesting going against CSUN. Dave Serrano is the first-year head coach. He's been a guy that's taken UC Irvine to the College World Series. He's taken Cal State Fullerton to the College World Series. He's now in his first year at Northridge. They haven't made postseason since 2002. And, there's a fascinating article. Kendall Rogers at D1 wrote a feature on Dave Serrano. When you talked to Lovelady and the media availability, was there any mention of how this series came about? Because it is I remember when the schedule came out, you were thrown off by it. I think like a lot of people were like, wow, that's a quirky little matchup, and it's a 4-game series.
Yeah, and it's something that I really want to know more about than what we heard. But apparently there is a website. Again, I don't know the name of it, but there's a website that college coaches, or I guess for baseball or maybe all sports around the nation, they congregate and basically send out feelers to other schools about, hey, I've got this open date to fill, and you have this open date to fill, and maybe we can work something out. And that's basically
sounds like college baseball Tinder.
It's kind of like that. It's basically Coach Lovelady reaching out to a bunch of teams. He saw up to 7 or 8 teams that had not scheduled an opponent for this weekend, and basically just reached out to all of them. And they came to an agreement with Cal State Northridge, and that's how this series came about. It's fascinating, and yet I don't know enough about it to really know all the ins and outs. But it's just like it is literally like Lovelady sending like a bunch of "you up" texts to like 8 different programs.
So that's
unbelievable. Why couldn't he just hit you up, Murph, and maybe you could have gone through the middle? You could have been the middleman here. I mean, you're both schools. I would have been the conduit. For Cal State Northridge. No, I'm excited. I mean, obviously, no one cares about this, but it's my undergrad school, UCF, versus my postgrad school at Cal State Northridge. You've got to be the only person in the country that could say this, right? That's gone to both schools. Like the odds there's probably like 1% population at best that went to UCF and to Northridge. And you're going to be covering this series. It is the Murph series. I'm calling it. It's bigger than the Freeway series. It's bigger than the Subway series. I don't think you're going to be throwing out the first pitch, but I feel like is donation.
I feel like you should be. I feel like they should. I feel like you should be out there throwing the first pitch.
Yeah.
Coach Love, if you're listening, let this happen, please.
Please don't. Anyway,
you feel obligated. You have to go to the Northridge dugout at some point and just wave that you're an alum. I mean, do you feel obligated? I mean, that's
You don't have any swag, do you?
I don't. This is tremendous podcasting.
I know. This is what we all came here for.
All right. Well, look, here's a name to keep in mind as we get through this 4-game series. Jason Newman. He missed a lot of last year. He's a two-way player. He's their best middle. He's the reigning player of the week. He is a redshirt senior, great power. DH usually can play the infield as well. And he's also one of their main relievers out of the bullpen, Murph. One of those unique, fun two-way players. Reminds me a little bit of DJ Hicks, for those that have followed the UCF program for a while. He was a two-time All-American at UCF earlier in the decade, in the 2010s. He's a good player. And here's the thing. We joke aside with you about this, but one thing is serious here is you do know a lot about West Coast baseball. You spend a lot of time in the Big West, and Dave Serrano is a big name out there, and he's going to try to turn around another Big West program.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's just I think there's a style of play out there that works, and he knows how to make it work out in the West Coast. Maybe it doesn't work in the SEC, but he's done it with Irvine and Fulton. Now he's trying to do it with Northridge. I thought another thing was interesting, too. Eric, you mentioned the Kendall Rogers article on D1 Baseball about Serrano, about how all of this really, because it's a new staff. I mean, obviously, there's a new staff at CSUN with Serrano, his 2 assistant coaches. And so once the old staff left, Northridge lost about 95% of its recruiting class. And they basically had to hustle about 2-3 months before the season to really cobble together not only prospects, but a roster. So you have a lot of JUCO guys and transfer guys who are filling this roster out, and it's worked so far. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. Well, I think it should be an interesting. I think that they're going to surprise some people. Don't let the fact that they're called Cal State Northridge fool you, because this team is a good program.
All right, Murph. So I'm calling 2 of the 4 games in the series. Am I going to get ripped by Northridge fans if I don't call them CSUN? Does it have to be? Is it CSUN or is there flexibility here? What do I do?
No, Cal State Northridge there's really only 2 that I know of. It's Cal State Northridge and CSUN. CSUN CSUN is not. It's like UCF, but calling them Cal State Northridge is not like calling UCF Central Florida. We all get bent out of shape when that happens. I think that's still very allowable. So no, you have some leeway.
Okay.
All right, as long as you say it as an alum, I feel better.
Thanks.
All right. In the meantime, by the way, the series starts on Friday. In the meantime,
free fishing, everybody.
Yeah.
Ballpark. Let's go.
Doubleheader on Saturday, too, so it's just like the Siena series. In the meantime, Eric Lopez, there's UCF Softball, who also had quite the weekend. Went down to Tampa and started just raking on people, in particular number 12 Tennessee. Run ruled them twice, 19-2 combined score in 2 games within about 24 hours of each other. Also swept FIU. They were supposed to play Wednesday night at Florida State, but that game got postponed due to weather. They're going to play that game this coming Wednesday at UCF. So that actually works out in UCF's favor. You were going to play at Florida State, and instead you get to play them. They're ranked number 9 in the country. Instead, you get to play them at home. However, for some reason, the folks that run the rankings in college softball did not think that was impressive enough. UCF was tabbed 21st in Softball America. However, the big poll, which is the National Fast Pitch Coaches Association Top 25, did not have UCF ranked. They were 26 on the outside looking in. Just about less than 30 points away from Texas Tech, who's at 25. And curiously, they put Tennessee in there at number 20, which is a head-scratcher, to say the least. D1 Softball had UCF in the rankings, and did ESPN have them in there? No, ESPN did not have them. So two of the 4...
ESPN doesn't have a
yeah, they do. They have the ESPN USA Softball Collegiate Top 25. And right now...
the USA Softball poll. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it's...
Okay, so bottom line is 2 of the 4 major polls did not have UCF ranked after run ruling the number 12 team in the country twice. All right, I'll just get out of the way and let you talk about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I enjoy the sport. I enjoy promoting the sport. I've enjoyed covering the sport. There is not a sport that's dumber in the entire college landscape than college softball. It's run by a bunch of imbeciles. They are clueless. They have no comprehension or common sense. Common sense you have to use in a lot of these sports, and softball does not believe in that. This goes into the committee when you put a team like Florida ahead of Alabama, when Alabama swept Florida and won the SEC title like they did last year in the NCAA tournament, when they put Alabama as an 8 seed, Florida as a 5 seed. Or we're the only sport that can put a Big Ten team that won 50-plus games and was ranked in the top 5 in the final poll. They put them number 8 in their initial unveiling, which is always my favorite. When the committee unveils their top 16 national seeds, they had Minnesota in the top 10. They win out. This was in 2017. They win out. Then 2 weeks later, somehow magically they do not appear in the top 60. They don't host. They go to Alabama, and they were voted number 1 going into the postseason. That's the stupidity that softball has been dealing with for years, and it just continues here, where you just described a team that blows out another team 19-2. Doesn't get ranked, but the team that goes, and you didn't even mention the fact that Tennessee lost twice to South Florida as well. So not only did they get destroyed by UCF, to put it in perspective, Tennessee has never been run-ruled in back-to-back games by a non-SEC team. Tells you how rare that is.
Well, let me play devil's advocate.
You better not have common sense then if you want to do that.
Okay, is the reason why they were left out because Tennessee also got bombed by USF?
No, because Tennessee stayed in. I think it's really, really simple. This is a political deal. Tennessee's a brand in college softball. It's really simple. This is not even a P5 situation, G5 thing at all, because Duke, for example, who's off to an amazing start, is a Power 5 school. They have beaten Texas at Texas, who Tennessee couldn't even beat. They're not even ranked. So this is just, hey, the Tennessee is a power brand. We're going to give them the benefit of doubt. And quite frankly, most of these coaches polls, first of all, this tells you the stupidity of our sport. Why do we need 2 coaches polls? Why do we need 2 coaches polls? Think about that. That's how idiotic this sport is when it comes to stuff like this. And it's just very disappointing because, see, this is why college baseball gets more credit and will have more credibility to the casual fan. It's hard to kind of defend the sport and try to promote the sport to the casual person when stupidity like this happens, because it's really hard to explain this stuff. It's disappointing. It's not the end of the world. Me and Brian have spoken on many episodes about how polls don't matter, and that is true. At the end of the day, things will be playing out. But this is just an example in a sport where it's stupidity. College baseball, fortunately, has common sense. They have people that actually pay attention to their sport. Their coaches actually pay attention to what's going on the field. They have media people that actually pay attention, like Kendall Rogers and Aaron Fitt. And so on, Baseball America. They have all these people that actually pay attention. The softball media, on the other hand, is more obsessed about doing articles about players that gave birth to a kid and then transferred from San Diego State to UCLA, or they're worried about coaches that are pregnant. That's what they write about. They don't write about what's actually going on the field. That's the problem with the sport. And until that mindset changes, it's going to continue, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. So let me put your straitjacket back on here and talk about UCF softball in general. All right. So what did we learn?
Need more Brian Murphy covering college softball.
What did we learn from this weekend, and what are we going to spin forward as they play LIU and Longwood this weekend?
Well, what we've learned is this team is really good offensively, especially their freshmen. Jada Cody was a monster in Tampa. She became the first UCF player to win Player of the Week in the American Conference as a freshman.
She's been really good. She's been excellent.
To put that in perspective, she's only the 3rd freshman overall at UCF to win a Player of the Week in a conference in the history of the program. Tiffany Lane did it in 2008 when UCF was in Conference USA, and then our friend Janae Shinhoster did it in the ASUN her freshman year. Believe it or not, Stephanie Best did not win Player of the Week as a freshman. So that tells you how hard that is. Georgia Blair has hit 6 home runs in the first 15 games. fastest night to ever do that. Shannon Doherty, and she's not a freshman, but she's a newcomer. Shannon Doherty's a freshman hitting 500. Jules Wilson has power as a freshman. They have depth. They have really a lot of different ways to beat you offensively. It's the deepest offense that I can remember UCF ever having in the 14 seasons that I've covered UCF softball. Go add that with a deep pitching staff with Aaliyah White, and then who's, by the way, her birthday's Thursday. You have G. Mancha, and you have Brianna Vasquez. This is a very deep and talented team, and Tennessee found that out the hard way. Now, this is an important weekend because they need to take care of business against LIU and Longwood, because after this weekend, as you mentioned, the Florida State game, they got washed out, and from what I understand, the tarp was not put on the Joanne Graff Field until early Wednesday, which was a problem because if you guys followed the forecast, you knew that it was going to rain pretty early all day on Wednesday. So the stadium took a pounding. They couldn't get the field in good enough shape to play. So that's what happened. So as a result, they're going to play at UCF on Wednesday. If the Knights take care of business this weekend, they should be ranked in the top 25 in every poll. Every poll. As you mentioned, they're ranked 21st in the Softball America, which is obviously a sister to Baseball America, and they're also ranked 25th in D1 Softball, which is also owned by D1 Baseball. But they need to win these 3 games because after this, you got Florida State on Wednesday, okay? Could be a potential top 25 match.
Yeah, here comes Murderers Row because they got to California.
This is unbelievable, boys. They go to Florida. They play Florida State at home on Wednesday. They take a flight to California Thursday. They're going to play Michigan, who's in the top 15, on Friday, March 6th in Los Angeles. Then they're going to play the number 1 ranked defending national champion UCLA Bruins. I dare you to find anybody in the country that has a 3-game stretch like that. Then they're going to play Cal State Fullerton, who's receiving votes and has been a dominant program in the Big West. There's another, again, Big West. They will also play Long Beach State on the road. They've got San Diego State. They got Minnesota, who's the World Series participant in the top 25. Then they visit Murph's old backgrounds. We've talked about the Murph series in baseball, where they're going to do a Murph off in Northridge in softball. Murph, March 9th, UCF at Northridge. I don't know if you have any advice for Coach Paul Malone as far as the campus facilities. I'm sure Coach Paul Malone knows a little bit about it since he used to be an assistant there, by the way. By the way, there you go. You need to talk to Coach Paul Malone about that. You both have that tie-in with Northridge.
I will say I have no advice other than please don't say Murph off ever again. That sounds bad.
Fair enough. After Northridge, I don't know, a one-off. I mean, I don't know how you want to call it. Then
they got Cal State Fullerton on Wednesday.
They got Fullerton out on the road. Then they go to Ole Miss. Ole Miss. So, point is, please take care of business this weekend because the level's going to go up a high level, especially if UCF is ranked in all the polls going into California. They'll have everybody's attention. But I will say this: the Tennessee sweep gives them a cushion. It's not going to be the end all be all in the West Coast. They have a little room for error, so they don't have to. They can just win some of those games. I think they'll be fine. To your point about the Florida State thing, UCF was not going to be able to travel to Tallahassee because of the California trip. I think Florida State, give Lonnie Alameda great credit. She's class act personified, knows that. Scheduling-wise, I don't think they would have been able to play later in the year, so they decided, you know what, let's go to Orlando. We'll play them. This is not the first time it's happened before. This has happened before between these two programs. So credit to them. Should be a lot of fun on Wednesday night with UCF and Florida State. But they got to take care of business, guys, this weekend because we've defended them all week. Night Nation, I got to give them a salute. They've been on social media hammering the softball pollsters and the poll sites and the softball media. I liked it with class. They've done it with class, which I'm even more proud of. Now it's up. We have to kind of back that up.
All right, so we have that, and that Florida State game. By the way, to put that all into perspective, the Florida State game set for Wednesday is their last home game for almost an entire month. We won't see them again on the home diamond until Wednesday, March 25th, when they play UNF, and that's a midweek in the middle of conference play because they have to go to Wichita State late in the month of March too. So hopefully they can turn some heads this weekend before they head out to California. 13-2 record, 9-2 at home and have won 8 in a row. So, all right, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll talk basketball. Murph is going to break down UCF men's basketball's just logic-defying last couple of games. And then we will also have Jeremy Brener talking about UCF women's basketball when we return. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Brian Murphy with you here. We can follow us at UCF_Banneret on Twitter. And follow us individually at Jeff_Sharon, Eric Lopez, Elo, and Spokes_Murphy. And if you follow Brian, you would know that UCF men's basketball is now teetering at 14-13 off of last night's. The last 2 games have really truly been bizarre. Coming off of that game against Cincinnati, the double overtime 89-87 win, where everyone was so excited about it. All of a sudden, followed up the best win of the season with 2 of the most disastrous losses of the season. First, Saturday home to Tulane. UCF had a 4-point lead with 16 seconds to go and found a way to lose 75-74 in regulation. Just a complete collapse down the stretch. Turnovers, fouling on 3-point shots, and it was just, it was, you have to feel shame after that. It was difficult to watch. And then last night at UConn, UCF goes up to Hartford and then just gets kind of just completely outclassed by UConn, 81-65. 17 for Colin Smith, 14 for Cesar DeJesus, but 3 Huskies finished in double figures, and it was an onslaught of just. The shooting feels like it's just kind of left UCF a little bit here, especially in the second half. What's going on here, Brian? What happened to this team after that Cincinnati game?
What happened?
What happened?
Part of it is just like the vagaries of sports, which no one wants to hear about. But a lot of it is just, this team is kind of playing for good and for worse, kind of the way we all thought they would end up, 9th in this conference. And there's been some really high moments and some really dispiriting moments. I just didn't think they would come all clustered together within the span of 6 days.
I don't think anybody did.
No. I mean, that Cincinnati win, that's supposed to vault you. That's the kind of win that vaults you onto a hot streak. That doesn't immediately lead into the biggest collapse of the season, nor does it lead into a road game where in the second half UCF just got, like you said, they got outclassed, they got outsmarted, they got out hustled. I wrote about it for the Black and Gold Banneret this morning. I thought it was a breakdown of their defense, but also UConn ran better offensive sets. They ran really smart, heavy motion sets that UCF couldn't keep up with. They ran a lot of cutters and screens, and UCF didn't cover correctly. It led to a bunch of easy baskets, and UConn basically had their way with the Knights in that second half of that game. There were some positives. Dazon Ingram's back and healthy. He looked good. Cesar DeJesus was good for a stretch. But this team's inconsistent, and I think we all knew that they were inconsistent. Heading into conference play through what we've seen the last 2 months. This is kind of a microcosm of what we've seen, just an inconsistent team, but it's the way that they have been inconsistent these last 3 games, and especially the back-to-backs last week. It's jarring. It's absolutely jarring.
Well, I told a couple people out there on Twitter, I'm like, the problem with this team is because of all the newcomers. They have, I guess, what I call high amplitude, right? The highs are super high, and the lows are super low. And we saw the highest of the highs with with Cincy, and then we saw the lowest of the lows with Tulane and UConn. But what does this do for the confidence of the players going forward? Because, we're coming down the stretch here, and obviously, they're not positioning themselves for the postseason, at least as far as we know. The last 2 games may have kind of put the nail in the coffin for that. But they have 3 games left. One of them's at Tulsa, where they've never won ever. Tulsa is tied for first place in the American with Cincinnati and Houston at 11-4 in the league. And then they got and then they're home for SM. That Tulsa game's on Saturday, by the way. And then Wednesday they're home for SMU. and then they finish the season with, thank God, ECU on Sunday, and ECU's at 5-11, although that's only a half game back in the standings. Like, where are their heads at right now, heading into these last 3 games, do you think?
Well, first of all, you say thank God they play ECU. Like, I don't know, they just lost to a team that's below ECU in the standings.
Well, yeah. Well, I guess they could be playing Houston, but they're not. So I guess maybe that's why.
You can't take anything for granted. I know what this. I think this team knows what it can be good at, and you see flashes of it. But I feel like these last few games, and Johnny Dawkins will never admit this, but I think these last couple games, this team understands where it lacks in areas where other teams don't in this conference. And I know they want to be optimistic about the players they've got and the mixture of guys, but the fact is that their good play cannot be sustained for long periods of time. The offense goes dormant way too much consistently. We saw that again last night when they had a 7-minute stretch with no field goals. And then defensively, they've been good this year. They really have been. I thought last night was one of the worst defensive games they played this year. But when you're not scoring like they do, when you're not scoring much, you have very little room for error defensively. And when both those things fall down, you get a result like you get last night. I do wonder, how they come out of this road trip if they lose at Tulsa, assuming they lose at Tulsa, because again they're 0-10 at Tulsa all time. Do they let that carry over to their final 2 games at home and into the conference tournament? Because, talking to them after that Cincinnati game, there was a ton of optimism about how this team could really move forward. And I feel like all of that was just zapped away by the Tulane game, where they blew a 7-point lead with 90 seconds left at home against the worst team in the conference. I want to see them, at least if they can't, do much in the tournament, try to show some fight here down the stretch so that they can move forward and move past some adversity. Because I fear right now that Tulane game was a blow that it doesn't look like they've recovered from yet, and I don't know if we'll see that they can.
I just want to state for the record that if they go into Tulsa and win, I'm just going to throw up my hands and be like, I don't get this team ever.
No, it would make sense, right? The AAC basketball makes no sense on the men's side.
Right.
The AAC basketball for the entire sport this year. I mean, Duke.
What a mess.
Oh my God, how can UCF blow a lead against Tulane? Well, Duke did the same thing at Wake Forest. They blew a 9-point lead with a minute to go? I mean, this year the sport
they did it. They did a Duke against Maryland. Wake Forest did a Duke to them.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's blown leads this year and things like that. Let me ask you this, Murph, because nobody, it's not an excuse, but I mean, it is worth noting because we haven't talked to you since, but you were the one that really got Johnny Dawkins to announce that Dre Fuller's out for the year when you had him the media availability before Cincinnati. We gave you credit. We called it. It was what it was. It was called a Murph bomb.
It was a Murph bomb. Deal with it.
Yeah. But anyway, in all seriousness, though, they lose Fuller, who I think you would agree prior to the injury, and then he came back, but he was not really the same guy. I thought was a very valuable guy, two-way player who can actually had good ball handling skills, can help you, bring up the ball if needed be, and can guard the best guy on the other team. You've had Dejon Ingram, who has been ill, missed the Cincinnati game, was limited, very limited, only played the first half in limited minutes against Tulane, and was again very limited in the UConn game.
Well, he played 26 minutes against UConn. He actually looked healthy against UConn.
Healthier, looked the best of the three, to your point. But he's used. I mean, prior to all this, he was playing 35, 30. I mean, he was pretty much good for that. My question is, has nutrition just caught up with this team? This was a team that didn't have a lot of room for error to begin with, if they were at full strength. And then you pluck away a part here and a pluck away there, because some people were talking about him having trouble for inbounding the basketball. And we just talked about two guys that arguably was two of their better ball handlers, especially Dejon. It just seems like it's one of those things that this team that, couldn't click, which is hard to do in basketball. You need that chemistry. It hasn't clicked. And there were some injuries and players that didn't play that maybe is affected in part where they're at now.
Yeah, I think we're overthinking. I think that's overthinking it a little bit. I think, certainly for the Tulane game, if we want to just magnify that one game, yes, it would have been better to have Dejon, who's 6'5", 6'6", taking the ball out of bounds those last two possessions and handling, instead of, a true freshman like Tony Johnson, who is still having his typical ups and downs, or Cesar DeJesus, who before last night really had a 3-game stretch where he was kind of invisible. You'd rather have Dazon there, and that might have changed the game there. But having Dazon for these, 2 games, I don't, they had him for UConn for most of the night, and he was really their best point guard, and it didn't draw them any closer. And they didn't need him to beat Cincinnati, so I don't know if that equals it out. I think we're overthinking it. I think you're right. I think you're right about UConn. Yeah, right. So I think we're overthinking it. So I'll just go with the Occam's razor of this team's not that good. They have pieces, especially with Tony Johnson and Darren Green. Dre Fuller is by far the most athletic wing on the team. If you can get those 3 to mature next year as sophomores, then you bring back Colin Smith, hopefully. You bring back Brandon Mahan. You obviously would add, maybe a transfer, an upperclassman transfer, and then you could have a better cohesive unit. Right now, there are just too many disparate parts trying to fit in. A lot of these guys haven't played a whole lot together, and it's showing. And I just don't think this team is very good right now.
Yeah, it's
a rebuild year, guys.
It is a rebuild year. It's just it hurts because you want to see these guys kind of end on a strong note, right? And maybe they still will. I mean, we still have 3 games to go, and then we have the American tournament. And I would not rule anything out with this team down the stretch. It's just that, man, that Tulane game was just a heartbreaker.
Well, the Tulane game stings because in reality, the UConn game. And Murphy, credit to you. You brought this up. I forget which episode it was, but we talked. When I asked you a couple episodes ago, how many teams in the American right now you think can win the tournament, and we basically agreed on 7 teams. And the team you highlighted was UConn. You really like UConn as a sleeper going into the tournament. I think you saw some of the reasons why you liked them in their performance on Wednesday. So let's give credit to UConn in that regard. But the Tulane game hurts because if you win the Tulane game, you're okay. You're still okay, in my opinion. You can try to steal the Tulsa game, and then you got 2 home games. Unfortunately, Tulane game really stings a little bit, and they're going to have to learn from that, though. That's part of the growing pains when the fans were clamoring for playing young kids and to play the freshmen and all that. Well, you're going to have to deal You're going to have to deal with the ups and downs of that.
And you saw that last night so much. I mean, Tony Johnson was so good against Cincinnati, and then was decent versus Tulane, but then they made some critical mistakes late. And then last night, he was just completely out of sorts. He was just erratic. He was moving too fast. He was just not in the game at all. And that's going to happen with true freshmen, especially true freshman point guards, who there's so much that depends on them for the offensive side. And so, you're going to have to ride these things out. And all we can say again is, hopefully they can be more competitive against Tulsa. I think it hurt that they were just so not competitive for the last 10 minutes of the UConn game. I mean, really, they got run out of the building there by the UConn's guards and Isaiah Whaley, and that they couldn't even keep that close, I think, really hurts too. And now they go to a place where they never won. You hope that they would at least be more competitive in that game and then come home and maybe try to win these last 2 home games, and maybe that gives them some confidence heading into the conference tournament. But I don't know. I'm done trying to figure out this conference. It makes no sense every time. The only thing I do know is that I know nothing, and that what we think is going to happen never really does. So it's going to be a weird tournament in Fort Worth. I mean, I want to say that, I think Houston's the best team still, but I would be shocked if they won it because we know that what should happen rarely ever does in this conference this year.
Yeah, so... Well, as the rest of the conference rolls forward, we'll see. I don't know. I still feel like there's an even better moment waiting for this team going forward. Maybe it's in the conference tournament. We don't know, which will be in Fort Worth for the first time. So follow Murph at Spokes_Murphy for all the latest details on UCF men's basketball. Over to the women. They had a huge victory on Wednesday night over Temple, a team that beat them in Philadelphia in a very close game. Earlier in the season, but this one pushed them up to 17-9, and the Knights are now in a 3-way tie for second behind UConn in the conference, along with Cincinnati and South Florida. Cincinnati obviously has Cincinnati lost to UConn. Gosh, what was the final score of that game? It was a 105-58 last night, and they have 2 games left. Yeah, it was a total blowout. And South Florida has one more game against UConn left on their schedule. That's how they finish out the season. So we brought in Jeremy Brener, our guy here at Black Gold Banneret, following UCF women's basketball, to break down last night and the path forward for UCF women's basketball. Joining me now here on the Black Gold Banneret Podcast, Jeremy Brener, covering UCF women's basketball as he has tonight. We're recording this on Wednesday night, just after UCF's 67-64 victory over Temple. JB, what's up, man?
Good, Jeff. Always good after a nice win, for sure.
Yeah, especially one like this. We were just talking about this right before we came on. This was UCF's first win this season in a game decided by 5 points or less. They have a couple wins by 6, but this is their first win in basically a one-possession game. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I had to do a double take when you asked me, but yeah, I think and wins like these at this time of the year is absolutely imperative, because these kind of games are going to show up. The American is so tight between 2 and 6 that any of these games could go any way in the tournament, which is coming up in 2 weeks now. So, and especially where UCF is, where could be an at-large team, might not be an at-large team if you can't get these wins real close. So the fact that they got this win tonight in just a 3-point game, really good sign for the night. So
they avenged the loss earlier this season in Philadelphia, which is just one of those games where UCF actually had a shot to, I believe, tie it at the buzzer and didn't make it. But KK Wright had 24, played all 40 minutes. Masani Kaba had 9 and 7, so I got to correct myself there on. And she also played the full 40. Who else? Brittany Smith had 9.
Brittany Smith had 9.
Yep.
And only about 14 or so minutes. She didn't play a whole lot.
Right.
A lot of that had to do with she was in foul trouble early, and but Brittany's huge for the team, and she's gonna see more time down the stretch. I feel like. I think tonight was just one of her off nights, but she's gonna be huge down the stretch. The big issue with tonight was inside. Temple out-rebounded UCF by about, at least 10 rebounds. So that was the big problem for the night, but the good thing that the Knights were able to do, they were able to spread the offense a lot more. It wasn't just KK doing her thing. I think, 5 Knights had at least 9 points or more. So the key to the Knights win was the balanced offense, for sure. And the fact that they can get more players involved is huge, especially at this time of the year.
Yeah, looking at the rebounding stats, I think that is a concern. Temple did out-rebound UCF 43-29, including, this is a little scary for me, and I want to know what you think about this. Temple had 18 offensive rebounds. UCF had 19 defensive rebounds. So a defensive rebound percentage hovering around 50%. They got to clean that up.
Yeah, I mean, well, the fact that they had a lot of offensive rebounds, I think, came from the fact that they were also shooting from outside a lot. But the good thing was the Knights were able to combat it. The defense is look, the Knights. The reason why they are where they are is because they are a defensive team. Defense is their identity. I believe before the UConn game, in their 5-game win streak, they had all 5 of those games were held to, they held their opponent to under 50 points. So this team is definitely a defensive team. But when you have nights like tonight where, Temple was hot from 3 early on, but the Knights were able to kind of, Temple played a very lax defense. They are more of an offensive team. So the Knights kind of had to play outside of their style a little bit tonight, but they were still able to get the win. And when you can get wins where you're playing not really your style, that's huge. That's huge, especially at this time of year. I know I've said that several times, but when you get to end of February, early March, that's crunch time, and they are delivering right now, which is great to see.
Yeah, and it's good to see that the defense, because usually teams get tired on defense as the season wears on, but not in the case of UCF, because look at the points off turnovers tonight, 19-5. UCF had the advantage on it, even though and it actually counteracted what Temple was able to do to them on second chance points. Temple outscored them by 8 on the second chance points, but UCF beat them by 14 in the points off turnovers, and that ended up more or less being the difference. All right, let's look at the standings right now. So in women's basketball, It's like you put UConn up there and then you just like cross them off. Okay, so here's the situation: UCF right now is tied for third with USF, who they have a game in hand on, by the way, because they swept USF at 9-5 in the league. Cincinnati's at 9-4, but UCF has a game in hand on them. And if I'm not mistaken, Cincinnati plays UConn. Yeah, they do. They play. Actually, they're playing UConn right tonight. That's right. So I have yet to check the score on that one.
Cincinnati has. Well, UConn's going to be Cincinnati.
Okay.
And I believe when it.
I'm checking the score right now. It's the finals. 105-58.
That's not good, Jeff.
Right.
Not good.
Not good but expected.
UCF did better.
Right. So that's going to put at the end of the night, okay, that's going to put UCF firmly in first place because they got the victory over Cincinnati just last week. So
they split the season series.
The season series.
I'm not sure if we have that tiebreaker. I think we might not, considering I remember when we were tied before we both played UConn, and Cincinnati was ahead on there. But I mean, when you're looking at 2 versus 3, I mean, how much is that really of? I mean, I guess we're crossing off UConn, so I guess it's really 1 versus 2. But when it gets to Cincinnati and UConn, I mean, you're looking at hairs.
Yeah. I think the key is like you're looking at is that bye though, if you can get to that number 2 spot, right?
Yes.
So.
Yes, especially I mean, at this point, Coach has talked about it in press conferences. The teams between 2 and 6 are so evenly, matched. They're very tight. It's really going to come down. It's not really going to come down to who has what number in front of them when they go to Connecticut. It's really going to come down to who executes. And I like where the Knights are at right now, only because they are playing. They played it. Not only have they been winning lately, they've been playing tough opponents lately. They got that win over Cincinnati last week. Tonight against Temple, a big win, a team that they could very easily see in Connecticut 2 weeks from now. They got the win against SMU earlier. They've beaten USF twice this season. I think they have the upper hand, or they have some kind of advantage coming to the conference tournament, just because they've been battle tested. They played UCLA earlier in the year, probably a team that's going to host a first and second round bracket in March Madness. So they've been battle tested, and they've proven that they can hang tough with the best teams around. And I think that I really like where UCF is heading right now.
Yeah, their RPI reflects that too, because right now they're at 39. They're at 39 coming into tonight. And let's see. Well, as I'm looking at where Temple is, Temple's at 90, so that might take a hit, but still 39. It looks like they're right where you want to be. Obviously, Charlie Cream had them as one of their last 4 in, and that's probably where they should stay. Of course, it's going to depend a lot on that conference tournament. Coach Abe, what did she say after the game about the defensive effort tonight?
She didn't speak too much about the defense for tonight, because tonight the story wasn't really the defense. It was more about the balance of the offense and the fact that they didn't turn over the ball that much. You said 19-5 in the points off turnovers. Well, it's hard for the other team to get points off turnovers when you don't turn the ball over. I think they had 5 turnovers altogether tonight. No one had more than 2 at most, but that was the key. It was more keeping care of that ball, and I think that's ultimately why UCF won this game. They simply didn't give the ball to Temple, and that's why UCF is sitting out on top tonight.
Yeah, Diamond Battles coming off the bench as your second point guard there. She had the 2 turnovers, which I mean you'd expect more from a point guard on either starting or off the bench, but you're right, only 5 turnovers is pretty.
You see a lot that Coach A plays Diamond and KK a lot, even though Diamond usually comes off the bench. But what you're seeing here is Diamond's actually the one taking up the ball. Right. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact where they're trying to get attention off of KK. And because everyone knows who KK Wright is. Everyone is very, aware of how, she's clearly the best player on the team. So if you can try to get some of the attention off of her and, spread it around, that's why Diamond takes the ball. That's why Diamond's trying to be a creator when she's on the floor. Masani Kaba's getting involved a lot. She had a really strong, point of time in the end of the third. She made 6 of her 9 points in a 3-minute stretch in the third quarter. It was great. But what you're seeing from tonight's game is there's a lot more. If you can get a lot of people involved, it's going to be very hard for a team to beat you, because KK Wright is going to do what she did tonight, 24 points tonight. She was also a very big part of why the team won the game. We haven't really talked a whole lot about KK, but that was huge tonight. I talked about KK about having that much, how much pressure that takes off her shoulders when everyone is able to perform well offensively, and she said it was very huge, and it really helps her game, because if she's playing with less pressure, then that allows her to kind of just do her thing. And I think she was over 50% shooting tonight, 24 points. What more can you ask for from your star point guard?
Yeah, I know. So they have 2 games left. They're at Memphis on Saturday, and then they're home on senior night on Monday at 7 against Wichita State, and that's going to be our last chance to see KK Wright in black and gold on the home floor. Mm-hmm. I mean, and obviously she's not the only senior on the roster.
As long as we make March Madness, yeah.
Yeah. And we don't know also if maybe we'll host if they don't get into the NCAAs, maybe they can host the NIT or whatnot. But KK, Siani Martin, and Destiny, Grace Stant, who was a redshirt senior as well, who didn't see action because of injuries this year, but they're the ones who we're going to be celebrating on Monday. Obviously, they want to win these games, but what's going to be the recipe here for these last 2 games as they get ready for the conference tournament?
Yeah, so you mentioned Siani Martin. We saw a huge, Siani Martin was huge tonight for the team. She and Coach Abe kind of alluded it to in her press conference, where seniors play really hard at this time of year, because this might be the last chance they'll ever get to play any kind of competitive basketball again. And Siani Martin is, the team is counting on Siani Martin, because Coach Abe was really stressing about how the team is still very young. And they're one of the younger teams in the conference. So when you get into the conference tournament, you're going to be playing a lot of seniors and playing very hard. And that's something that Temple was able to do tonight. At last stretch of the season, you're going to play harder you can get, the last chance you can get to kind of help your positioning in the standings. And Siani Martin was huge tonight, and she's going to be huge down the stretch for the team, because she's playing possibly her final minutes for her basketball career. So I think they're going to look for Siani a lot, and especially KK, obviously KK also being a senior. So expect those 2 to be involved, and obviously Masani Kaba, although not a senior or a junior, she played all 40 minutes tonight. So Masani's going to play a lot of minutes. KK's going to play a lot of minutes. I would be very surprised if they came out for these last 2 games unless the score is absolutely, out of hand. But look for those 2. Siani's also going to play a little bit more, I think, off the bench. And yeah, I think it's going to be a huge balanced effort from here on out, because so many players on this team can offer so many different things. And at the beginning of the season, it was a lot of new players. But I think what we've seen in this, in this month of February, they're starting to figure it out. And I think they are at the point where they're playing their best basketball, which I think you really want to see at this point of the year.
All right. Should be a lot of fun, too, to see as they come down the stretch. And obviously you'll be there following them. I'll be there following them for the Monday night, that Monday night game. And then after that, it's off to Connecticut for the conference tournament, and see if they can polish off their resume as best they can for the NCAAs. Jeremy Brener joining us here to talk UCF women's basketball. Jeremy, where can people find you?
Find me on Twitter at Jeremy Brener, JeremyBrener. Always a pleasure, Jeff.
All right, don't forget to follow Jeremy at Jeremy Brener on Twitter for the latest on UCF women's hoops. Coming up next, my interview with a sports legend, a UCF legend. It's not every day you get to interview a guy who's won an Olympic gold medalist, especially a UCF grad who's won Olympic gold. Phil Dalhausser, professional pro beach volleyball player and UCF graduate, joins us here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon with you here, and joining us now is, I think if you make a Mount Rushmore of athletes with UCF connections, this guy is on there. He's been part of the AVP Pro Volleyball Tour since the early 2000s. Won the gold medal in beach volleyball in the 2008 Beijing Summer Games. He's been an Olympian 3 times, 2-time world champion. He's won a gazillion medals on the World Volleyball Tour. And if all goes well, he'll be in his 4th Olympiad this year in Tokyo in 2020. Of course, I'm talking about beach volleyball legend Phil Dalhausser, joining us here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. What's up, Phil? How are you?
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing good. Thank you so much for taking the time for us. The reason why we're talking today is because you guys are doing this exhibition match down in Lake Nona, which we're let's start by talking about that a little bit. You and Nick Lucena are back at it again, and tell us about this exhibition match that's going on down at Lake Nona between you and Team Italy.
So we have a little exhibition match going on, as you said, against the Italians. They actually won silver in 2016 in Rio. They're in town because we've been training against them for the past 2.5 weeks or so, which is great for us because we don't really have that many high-level players to train against in Central Florida. So I figured why not have an exhibition out here and show people in Central Florida what high-level volleyball looks like, or high-level beach volleyball looks like.
So the exhibition is going to be at Boxey Park down in Lake Nona this coming Friday, February 28th at 7:30 p.m. And the team you're going to be playing against is Paolo Nicolai and Daniele Lupo from Team Italy, who, like you said, were the silver medalists in 2012. So it should be a lot of fun. It's going to be, like you said, high-level volleyball locally here in Central Florida. That's going to be a blast. So let's hop in the Wayback Machine real quick. So it's no secret to anyone who listens to this podcast that you are a UCF graduate. And it's kind of a unique thing when we talk about you in a UCF context, because you never actually played sports for a UCF athletics NCAA level team, but you were a student at UCF. So tell us the story of how Phil Dalhausser got to UCF and your years as a college student in Orlando.
Okay. I could go as far as back to high school because I was planning on going to UF actually and becoming a pharmacist. And my 12th grade economics teacher had a guest speaker, and she said pharmacists are going to be obsolete in 10 years. So that switched my plan. So I ended up going to UCF with a couple of buddies. And luckily they had 4 beautiful lit beach volleyball courts on campus, and I probably spent literally, and this is not a joke, I probably spent more time there than I did in the classroom in my 4.5 years there. And then when I graduated, I didn't want to get a real job, so to avoid that, I decided to pursue beach volleyball.
When did you realize that, you know what, I could be a professional level beach volleyball player?
I could tell you exactly the moment. It was in 2004. It was my second year on tour, on the AVP Pro Tour. In Hermosa Beach, California, we got a 3rd place finish. And it was the highest finish of any East Coast team ever in the history of the sport. And we beat Karch Karai in that tournament, and we beat the 2 Olympic teams that were heading to Athens later that summer in that tournament as well. And they were kind of sunk in. I was like, oh, this could actually turn into something, this whole beach volleyball thing.
What was the grind like over the years, going from a relatively unknown, because like you said, being from the East Coast, you grew up in Central Florida. You went to, like you said, you went to Mainland High School in Daytona, then over to UCF. What was the grind like to get to that point, and then leading up to the point where where you guys became, where you and Todd Rogers, when you paired up in 2006, were ready to, be big on the world stage? Because, like you said, you're kind of at a disadvantage when you're playing in Florida, because everybody who's good is out in California. So what was that like? Just the day in, the day out grind?
Well, everyone has to start somewhere, right? So I actually think it was an advantage for me because when everyone was playing indoor collegiately, I was playing beach for all those years and playing in a tournament just about every weekend in the summer. So I was kind of getting experience, learning how to win in tournaments, when I was 20, 21, 22, whatever. And then when I turned 23 is when I kind of went after it. And really, everything kind of fell into place. There was another professional team on the East Coast. They lived in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and they would invite like up-and-comers on the East Coast to their house. One of them, his parents were well off, and they owned a house on the beach in Myrtle, and had a court right in the backyard. So he offered us to live there rent-free. And so we had like a training team right there, rent-free. And we literally just drove up and down the East Coast playing in all these tournaments just about every weekend. And really it was a way to fund flights out to California to try to qualify onto the AVP. And after a year of that, we did well enough to be in the main draw. So basically we had enough points where we didn't have to qualify anymore on the Pro Tour.
So that was like, what Malcolm Gladwell says, putting in your 10,000 hours, right? Just going up and down the East Coast. Wow.
Exactly. And I think that's where a lot of people nowadays think they could just get from point A to point Z right away, but you got to go through the whole alphabet to get to point Z. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you do have to put your 10,000 hours in, and it just doesn't happen overnight.
In 2008, you go to the Olympics in Beijing with Todd Rogers. You guys win the gold. What a moment! All the folks who listen to the show know I'm a huge Olympic nerd. I watch every event. I have the Olympics on whenever they're happening. I'll watch 10 hours of rowing in a row. I don't care if it's the Olympics.
Even
I'm watching
equestrian.
I'm in on it, especially. And a good culture of equestrian down here in Central Florida too. But when you win the gold medal with Todd, how did that change your career in volleyball?
Well, I kind of compare it to a quarterback win in the Super Bowl. You're not considered elite until you win a Super Bowl, basically, right? So Dan Marino, one of the best passers ever, but never won the big one. So he's not put on that Mount Rushmore, So that kind of defines a beach volleyball player's career if you win the big one, and that's for us is the Olympics, and also the World Champs, which is every odd year, so every other year basically.
Yeah. In the you continued to play all the way through. You went to the Olympics in 2012, didn't win the gold there, but still, even making it is such a remarkable achievement. And then in 2016 as well. And then, I was reading that you kind of were on the fence about retirement a little bit, and Todd talked about it a little bit, and Nick, your current partner, Nick Lucena, talked about it, but something pulled you back, and you decided, I'm not quite done yet. What was it that pulled you back into volleyball when you were thinking about hanging it up?
Well, after the 2018 season, I believe. Yes. Man, I was just gone so much. I was missing my family. I was probably gone 4 or 5 months of the year, traveling. And now that I live in Orlando, I kind of had to train to travel. And then anytime I was home, we had a house full of people with my coach and Nick staying in the house. So it kind of really wore on me, and at that point I'd already had 15 good years on tour, or 16, whatever it is, and but I kind of did some self-searching. I was reading like spiritual books or whatever, like self-help books. I don't know what to call them, and a lot of them talked about what's your purpose in life. And one day I was kind of just talking to myself in the kitchen, and I was like, "What is my purpose in life?" And my wife goes, "You're an idiot if you don't think beach volleyball is your purpose in life." And it kind of hit me. I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's a no-brainer." Like, why? How has that? I've never thought of that. And so then it completely changed my mindset, and I figured, go for another Olympics, and then I'd be happy with walking away from the sport, no matter what, if we made it or if we didn't.
Wow. So right now, you guys are in the FIVB rankings. You and Nick Lucena are right now, I think, number 9 in the FIVB World Rankings. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's the top 2 ranked American teams that qualify for the Olympics heading into the summer. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. And top 16 in the world.
Top 16 in the world. So how many opportunities, what do you guys have to do from now until the qualifying deadline in order to just ensure that you have one of those 2 spots? Because the grind is going to step up again as we get ready for the Olympics.
Yep. We're actually in a bit of a dogfight because 2 other American teams are up there as well. We're actually, in Olympic ranking, we're actually 3rd among Americans. But how it works is they take your 12 best finishes from 2019 and half of 2020, and we're about 900 points away from the 2nd place American team, but they have 12 finishes and we have 10 finishes. And basically, if we finish, say we take 2 ninths, then we would pass them. So that just kind of shows how far we are behind them. So 9th is, for us, is kind of an okay tournament, like not great and not terrible, I guess. To kind of put it in perspective.
I'm looking at your schedule on your site, phildalhausser.com. You've got 9 international beach tournaments coming up, including 2 here in the United States. Huntington Beach, of course, which is the big one every year, and then Austin coming up. You also got New York City in early June, Seattle in late June. So it feels like it's gonna the travel that you guys are doing now, because it's an international tour, is so much more than it was back when it was just, in the United States, right? In the old AVP.
Well, yeah. So there's 2 professional tours, basically. There's the AVP, that's just domestic, only American players can play, or players with green cards. And then there's the World Tour, which is the FIVB. And the way you qualify for the Olympics is only strictly through the World Tour can you get points.
I see.
So actually in about 9 days, we leave for Doha, Qatar, which is actually kind of a nice place if anyone ever is in that area of the world and wants to visit it. But from there, we go to Australia to play a tournament, and then from Australia we go to Cancun. So it's going to be a pretty brutal 3-week trip. But it's kind of a last for all, so why not, throw them all in there, all the chips in there, and see what happens.
Tell me about the sport, the state of the sport of beach volleyball right now. There's a little bit of a resurgence. I mean, I remember as a kid watching Karch Karai, and the first time beach volleyball was in the Olympics, I think it was '96 in Atlanta, and it became a huge hit. And when you were in Beijing and then all the way through, beach volleyball's on TV all the time on the major network broadcast on NBC. They don't stick it on USA Network or CNBC. You guys are quite often live, wherever the time zones obviously permit. So from where you stand over the past 15 to 20 years as someone who's participated at the very top level of sport, what's the state of the game right now?
Well, beach volleyball is really close to turning into like an Olympic sport, because for example, like a swimming or a track and field, where it's just brought to light during every 4 years. But the AVP now has a streaming deal with Amazon Prime, so every tournament in the U.S. is streamed. 4 courts are streamed on Amazon Prime. So if you have Amazon Prime, which just about everybody does now, you can watch whenever tournaments are going on. So that's helping the sport a lot domestically. And every once in a while, like you mentioned, we're still on NBC. The big ones usually Manhattan Beach, New York City, and Chicago are usually the 3 that are on NBC. But internationally, however, we used to play like in the late 2000s, like 07, 08, 09. We had like 10, 11 Grand Slams, which was great. Like, it's similar to tennis or golf, whatever, but we had like 10.
Right.
Now, we're lucky if we have 3, maybe 4 here and there. So internationally, it's not doing so great. But the level of play is higher than it's ever been before, in my opinion. So it's a bit of a shame, because the level of play is so high right now. So many good teams. It's just not Brazil and USA battling it out anymore. It's the best team in the world right now is actually these Norwegian kids, believe it or not. The second best team in the world is a Russian team. So Europe is caught up to the U.S. and Brazil, and it's every match now is a battle on the World Tour.
Here in the U.S., beach volleyball has taken off in college too. We've seen it really emerge as a big spring sport. And I know that UCF has been trying to, for a few years. I know Todd Dagenais has been trying to make beach volleyball happen at UCF, but it seems like it just hasn't quite gotten the impetus going. What do you think about the future of beach volleyball as an NCAA sport?
I mean, it's great for the women's side, especially once they come out of college, because now USA Volleyball kind of has this great feeder program for beach volleyball, and these kids come out at 23 and they're basically veterans, or 22, 23, and they're basically veterans of beach volleyball. And they could just jump out onto the World Tour and be productive players. But it's great for the sport. Indoor has dominated, the sport for a long time, but now there's a little bit of a shift going on. More and more kids are going out to the beach. Hopefully we could get a men's program men's programs going around in college, which would be ideal, but it's just the Title IX is kind of tricky, with getting more men's sports in college.
Yeah. I know I would love to see both men's volleyball and beach volleyball at UCF. I think it would be a great thing for the athletic program, and it would be fun to watch. And we'll see probably see a lot more of you coming out to matches too, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
So let me ask you about Tokyo real quick. So a little bit of news this week with some of the executives that are running the Olympics and the scare about the coronavirus that's out in China. What have obviously I know that it's kind of like there's a lot of wait and see here, but what have you been told about the preparations for Tokyo with regard to the spread of the virus, and how do you feel about all that's going on right now?
Well, it seems like something pops up every Olympic year. In 2008 Beijing, it was the pollution. Everyone was worried about pollution. In London, it was terrorist attacks or whatever. And then in Rio, it was Zika virus. Remember the Zika virus?
Yeah.
We actually had 2 tournaments in China that were on the schedule that actually just recently gotten canceled, which were Olympic qualification events as well. I don't know. Well, I mean, I guess we'll see what happens. I can't imagine Tokyo letting the Olympics slip through their hands when they put so much money and effort, and they're building. They built the village from nothing, basically. So I can't imagine them canceling it. Or I heard that London is ready; they'd be ready to run it again, which I'd be cool with because London is great.
Yeah, London was pretty cool, and probably one of the best run. Let me ask you this too: out of the 3 Olympics you've been to, London, Beijing, and Rio, which one was your favorite place to be at?
Oh, London for sure.
Yeah, why is that?
Well, one, they speak the language, so it made it easy to communicate. 2, you could just get around so easily on the subway, or the tube, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, the tube.
And it just, they had it. Everything was well organized, and London's a great city, beautiful. But with Beijing, Beijing was super spread out, and it took, and it's kind of the same with Rio too. It just took forever to get anywhere, and so it's a no-brainer for me. Even though I won gold in Beijing, London was still way better.
Yeah, it's tough getting around some of these cities, especially with like Rio. It felt like everything was so cramped because it's in between the mountains and the sea, and it's just it's everything is really cramped. Like, you think one day maybe Orlando could host the Olympics?
I mean, Orlando can handle a bunch of tourists. We do every year.
Yeah. So
I don't see why not. We definitely have enough hotels, and we. I mean, I don't know if I'm blanking on the stadium's name downtown. I don't know if that's the old stadium.
Yeah, the Camping World Stadium, the old Citrus Bowl. It's not big enough to do track and field. I feel like that they would have to do something with track and field and swimming too, because I don't think we have a large enough, swimming and diving venue, at least here. I mean, unless people wanted to go up to Gainesville or something. But you have Wide World of Sports and UCF and the soccer stadium and the arena and everything. There's certainly a possibility that, I don't know, maybe one day. All right. Last little bit for you. I just want to go over the exhibition one more time for everyone who's listening. It's at Boxey Park in Lake Nona. It's Friday at 7:30. Exhibition match. It's you and Nick Lucena against Paola Nicolai and Danielle Lupo from Italy, and it should be a real good match. I know it's tagged. I know you said, hey, it's an exhibition, but it's not a preseason. It's not a preseason NFL game for sure. You guys bring it in these exhibition matches, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. No one wants to lose, and we're really like a week and a half out before we play on our first event. So this is like the first kind of real match we would play. So it's kind of a nice little warm up. And I wanted to say that it's free entry. So you just come, and I really don't know. We don't know how many people are going to come. There's going to be seats for about 500 people apparently. And if more people come, then it might just be standing room only. So I would say get there early. Grab some food there. There's a couple of little like stationary food trucks. You grab some food and adult beverage if you like, and post up in the seat and enjoy the show, I guess.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Might be a little chilly on Friday night too, though. I'm seeing the forecast is in the 60s during the day. So, but nonetheless, you guys are ready to bring it for this tour. And then how can people follow you and Nick as you begin your journey toward Tokyo for 2020?
I guess I'm not exactly a social media person, but
good for you.
I'm forced to, but I'm most active on Instagram, so that's at Phil Dalhausser. I go in spurts. I'll go, in 1 week I'll post 3 or 4 times, and then I'll go like a month without posting. So, but it's a little easier when I'm playing events, and I can post what how the day went, and we went 2-0 or whatever, and post a couple videos or whatever.
Yeah, and the photos are awesome because you guys have amazing photographers that come to these events too, which is pretty cool. So
yeah, it's nice that we have access to them.
All right, Phil Dalhausser from a 3-time Olympian, 1-time gold medalist, 2-time world champion, one of the greats of volleyball to ever come from the United States. It's a privilege to have you on the show. And again, I'll be seeing you down at Boxy Park on Friday at 7:30, and then we'll all be following you here on Black and Gold Banneret as you and Nick begin the journey toward Tokyo. So best of luck the rest of the way. Thank you so much for spending the time with us, and I'll see you on Friday night.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, stick around. We'll be right back just after this. All right, welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Brian Murphy, Eric Lopez with you. A little news to pass along for you today. The UCF football game against Georgia Tech, which was scheduled to be Saturday, September 19th, has been moved up 1 day. It will be Friday, September 18th, likely in primetime at Bobby Dodd Stadium. This is good news for UCF because they did previously have just 4 days in between this game in Atlanta at Georgia Tech and then their conference opener at ECU on Thursday night, September 24th. Now they get an extra day for this. Kind of a bummer for some of the fans out there who've been complaining about it on Twitter relentlessly, but I'm pretty sure that the coaching staff and the players are like, all right, we got an extra day. That's okay. And hey, we'll be on national TV. So there's that. Are we happy about this, gentlemen?
I am, just from a pure convenience standpoint of where, I thought I was going to have to stay in Georgia or stay in Atlanta for a couple of days before just going straight over to Greenville. Now I might actually have some time to come home before leaving for Greenville. I want to, just repeat that this is all about me. Everything is about me.
As well as should. Not the only thing that's,
you
really,
media types.
Well, look, this was such an overblown thing. People like Jeff on media made a big deal out of it and all that. Oh, my God, we're going to play a short week. Oh. No, there you go. Now you're happy now? Move on.
Good. Yeah, I am happy. Thank you.
So what if we screw the fans that were planning on traveling up to Atlanta for the Saturday game? Whatever.
I don't think as many fans are planning on going up there. It would have been a noon kick. I mean,
you're right. Besides, you got to save your money for the second trip later in the year when we go undefeated. We're playing the New Year's Six.
Hey, now we're talking
with our new staff, Murph, who Murph got to talk to, by the way, on Wednesday, didn't you, Murph?
Yes, I did. We got to talk to new co-offensive coordinator Alex Golesh, comes from Iowa State, who really, I think he's really in here for his recruiting chops. He's outstanding as a recruiter. Then we had Joey Halsley, who was here last year as a assistant. He's been promoted to QB's coach.
The Admiral, Joey Halsley.
Joey Halsley, yes. And then Anthony Tucker, who is still the running backs coach, but will split co-OC duties with Golesh. So we talked to them on Wednesday. I'll try to get something up about Golesh this weekend between baseball games, because I think that's he was pretty interesting, and I want to delve more into Halsey's. What's great about Halsley is that he played under Heupel at Oklahoma and then coached alongside him at all his other stops. So I thought it's a tremendous relationship, but I want to delve further into that with him before I write anything about it. But I'll write out something about Golesh, and then tomorrow morning we're out here at 8:40. Friday morning we'll be out here, I think, at 8:45 to get some dynamite B-roll of spring practice workouts.
Yeah, everybody out there doing calisthenics. Everybody's excited about this. Let me tell you.
I mean, Murph, if you want, I can assist you and go with you so we can break down how they look in that first 15 minutes compared to last year in the first 15 minutes in spring. I know that's really the most important thing this week.
I mean, my expectations are high, and I think my baseline, my floor is it better be the best athletic movements I've seen from any human beings in the history of mankind. Other than that, it's a failure.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Am I the only one that thinks Golesh has a little Sean McVay look-alike there going? Or no?
Sean McVay? No. He has you know what he looks like? Kevin Youkilis. If Kevin Youkilis shaved down his beard a little bit, because he's got a really big jawline. McVay doesn't have it. McVay has a very tiny face.
Okay.
But if you look at Golesh and look at like Kevin Youkilis in the prime of his career, but like take down the beard, that's who that looks like.
Yeah. Well, we got all right. Well, I mean,
do you like that?
I'll take it. Yeah.
You like that?
I'll accept that. It's right up there with you and Lars Ulrich, I must say.
Oh, don't. Don't.
All right. The men's tennis, they will play FAU on Saturday back home after 2 wins. They had quite a bit of time off, 20 days in between 2 wins against Virginia and Illinois. Rather, their last win was at Illinois in Chicago. And they're back to action Saturday and then Sunday. FAU and Stetson, respectively, back at the USTA tennis complex. What else do we have here? Oh, women's tennis is also back in action here. They're on the road, however. They play Friday it's on the road against number 29, Old Dominion. But they're playing in New Orleans, and then on Saturday they play at Tulane. So that's their first match in the American this year. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as their season continues. Just want to give an update on the golf teams here real quick. The women's golf team plays next weekend, Saturday, in Gainesville at the Lady Gator. And the men's golf team is after they finished in 14th at the Gator Invitational. They're coming up this coming weekend, Sunday through Tuesday, at the Southern Highlands Collegiate in Las Vegas, Nevada, hosted by UNLV. So, and then they will be back at home March 14th in Howey in the Hills for the Mission in Spring Spectacular. Okay, let's wrap this thing up. I know you kind of touched upon it, but any last thoughts, Murph? Anything that you wanted to work on this week that you've got coming up?
Got a lot to work on.
Yeah.
It's
the most wonderful time of year.
It really I don't know if this is technically the spring equinox, but it sure is for me.
Yeah, it is. It's the spring sports equinox. We've established this.
I'm exhausted. I need like 1 day off, which I haven't had in a while. But that's not coming until at least Monday, because Friday morning we'll be out here watching guys stretch, and then we'll talk to Coach Heupel and some players Friday late morning, early afternoon. We should have Randy Shan as well out here. Friday night, obviously, baseball on Friday night. Elo will be out there Saturday, correct, Elo? You'll be out there Saturday?
Yeah, I'll be calling the game, our first game on Saturday, 2:00. I will be out there.
So I got to figure out how to juggle the nightcap of that doubleheader on Saturday, which should start around 5:36, with the basketball game, men's basketball against Tulsa will tip around 6 as well. So I got to figure out.
Merv, I mean, are you going to have Johnny Dawkins for media availability on Friday, sandwiched in on Friday? Just get all three.
I've already asked Stan Porcella, and he said no, and I said thank you. Good. And then we'll be out there Sunday for the baseball recap, and then Monday I might sleep. So it'll be fun. By the way, Eric, I've looked it up, doubling back to something we mentioned in the first block of the show. CSUN only wants to be known as CSUN. You cannot call them Northridge. You can't call them Northridge or CSU.
What's the bigger?
It's CSUN and CSUN. Get your facts right.
What's the bigger party foul? Calling UCF Central Florida or calling CSUN Cal State Northridge?
I mean, I think I'm a little more biased in this issue because I have more allegiance to UCF. I mean, not only did I go here for like 3 times as many years because I took the Van Wilder route through undergrad, but also because I live here and have worked here for a few years. Like, I think it's more of a sin. First of all, neither one is as big as the fan bases want you to believe. Like, UCF, calling it Central Florida is not an affront, guys, so just settle that down. I understand Golden Knights is really sloppy because that got changed 13 years ago. Central Florida is still part of your name, so that's fine. But I guess because I've what?
It says it on the degree.
I understand, and also because Central Florida, see, I just did it.
Oh my God, you did it!
You know it. Because UCF is more of a national brand than Cal State Northridge, I think that's much more acceptable. No one around the country is going to know what CSUN means right off the bat. UCF in the last 5-10 years has developed that, so you would understand what UCF means.
Yeah.
But CSUN is still kind of in the wilderness, really only known to most of us in Southern California.
All right, and Elo, what do you got?
All right, so first of all, on the site, on blackandgoldbanneret.com, I've got 3 articles out. I had the recap of the Auburn series.
You were all over it, man, this weekend. You I was gonna do some of that stuff, and you jumped in. You're like, I got this. I'm like, what a pro.
You're darn right. I was in the zone. I was locked in. I got the baseball. I got the softball domination of Tennessee and what that meant. And then women's basketball, you and Jeremy talked about, big win. What's their postseason outlooks? Looking better and better each day. I broke that down on blackandgoldbanneret.com. As Murph mentioned, I will be calling softball this weekend. I'll be calling softball Friday at 6 o'clock. Follow me on this. So I'll be calling softball, UCF and LIU Brooklyn, 6 o'clock approximately on Friday. Saturday, I'll be calling the first game of the doubleheader of baseball, UCF and CSUN, 2 o'clock. Trevor Holloway will be starting that game as the pitching staffs were announced, by the way. Mr. Colton Gordon will go Friday night, and then Patterson will go the second game doubleheader, Murph?
Patterson. No R. It's Patterson, Eric.
That's cool. Thank you. All right. I haven't had
pretend you have a New Jersey accent like me. Patterson.
Patterson.
Yeah, you see.
He'll be calling the third. But I don't have to worry about it. I'm not calling that game. I'm calling the Holloway.
Okay, good to know. Who cares? Who started? It doesn't matter.
I'm
Whatever.
calling multiple sports here. I got to keep a straight and narrow. So I'll be calling baseball at 2. Then I'm heading over to softball to call UCF versus Longwood at 6 o'clock on Saturday. And then Sunday I'm going back to baseball to call the finale with the Sheriff on the mound, UCF and CSUN at 1 o'clock. I may or may not be breaking down Brian Murphy's degrees from both schools at some point during these games. And some breaking news, boys, that is some good news for UCF baseball. And if you believe in omens, my friend, That's right. Bill Goldberg has just won the WWE title in Saudi Arabia from The Fiend. He is the new champion. Odds are he will be defending the title in Tampa, Florida in April at WrestleMania, just like he did in 2017 in Orlando, Florida, when he defended his title. Why is that significant? because that was the same year UCF won the American Conference Championship and made the NCAA tournament under Coach Lovelady, which they have matched the best start ever. Could we be seeing deja vu again, boys? Huh?
Could we be seeing Bill Goldberg at wrestling night?
No.
Oh, come on.
He's the champ.
Former Sacramento Surge defensive tackle Bill Goldberg.
Jeff, we have an open invitation, or at least Lovelady has sent out an open invitation.
Yeah, how did we not mention that? Yeah, shout out to Titus O'Neil. Spoke to the softball team prior to their games against Tennessee. Whatever he said worked, because UCF dominated. Spoke to the team. I mentioned to Titus, hey, I think Coach Lovelady would be more than happy to have you on as well, either on wrestling night or whatever night you would like to come. And Greg Lovelady extended that offer, right, Murph?
Yes, he did. He said whenever it's free for him, he can come on out. So maybe we might see Titus worldwide out there on wrestling night.
I'm in on this. He brought in some good karma for UCF softball. They're still undefeated since he talked to them. Hey, why not? Let's spread the magic around.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's gonna be good. I'm feeling good.
I'm very happy with Eric Lopez's commitment to this bit. Because I had slept on my game today. I was not going to bring up wrestling. And also, I totally forgot that Super Showdown was happening because that show, for so many reasons, is so wrong. But I appreciate Eric. I appreciate Eric shoving that into the back end of the show.
This is big, though. This affects baseball. I just said Goldberg was the champion at Orlando when Greg Lovelady went to his first WrestleMania, which you wrote about. We talked to him about it in depth. One of the greatest award-winning articles in Black and Gold Banneret history. We may have to bring that back out during that week. I don't know. But nonetheless, I think that's a good omen if you're a UCF baseball fan. It's cliche. Huh?
I agree with that. I don't agree with Bill Goldberg being a top guy in this business anymore, but whatever. That's a conversation for another time.
Yeah. All right. Well, by the way, Friday night, I will be at the volleyball match with Phil Dalhausser and his partner Nick Lucena, taking on Team Italy as Phil's last run toward a gold medal begins here at Boxey Park in Lake Nona. So I'm really excited to be doing that. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm a total Olympic nerd, and so I'm going to totally nerd out. It's going to be fantastic. All right. Be sure to follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com. Follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret. If you haven't yet, and I don't know what's the matter with you if you haven't, make sure you subscribe to our podcasts wherever you can get your podcasts, even on Spotify. We're up on Spotify, which is great, as well as Apple and all other podcast platforms. Also, don't be afraid to follow the rest of us. Obviously, Derek Warden with his photo galleries from everywhere. Luke Saris, you want to follow Jeremy Brener, and everybody on the. We have so many guys on staff now. I'm starting to lose track, but yeah, we got to get Anthony Lennon. I'm so excited about what Anthony did last week and we're going to be doing some more off-season stuff with him. As well, and then we have a Twitter list that you can follow. If you go to UCF_Banneret, check out our lists, and yeah, that'll get you all set for everything UCF. Go ahead.
We should, usually, there's not a lot of, outside of me, Jeremy, and you and Eric. We don't, that's really the four of us do a lot of writing, but Anthony put up something last week about Marlon Williams having a breakout season coming up in 2020 that I thought was fascinating. It's really the kind of stuff that Anthony was born to write about, breaking down film, showing why Marlon is going to succeed in 2020 and kind of maybe not directly fill the shoes of Gabe Davis, but kind of help replace him and pick up the slack, basically.
Yeah. And follow, by the way, you can also follow him. You can follow Statboy Drew as well on Twitter as well. CFB Asterisk. We've got this amazing roster of people who just have great insight on UCF sports all over the place, and I'm glad that this is a place for all of us to come together and share what we know about UCF sports with you. So for all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Enjoy another busy weekend of UCF sports. We'll see you next week.